So I am just on the BJJ Fanatics website, and what's amazing is now we've already talked about gravity is your friend, but there are 2 other instructionals that you might want to talk about.
Recently, I had the opportunity to work with BJJ Fanatics guy, and now we have 3 instructionals out there. We have escapes engineered for guys over 40. If you're 40 or more, hey, dig into it. Gravity is your friend. Sit-up sweeps. Been there for some time, and is really, really getting a lot of attention. And then we have the smash the knee folding pass. Now, that's one of my favorites. So if you haven't looked at them, take a look. BJJfanatics.com.
Welcome to Raw Radio.
And we laugh again.
Here we go.
My finger itches.
That was the lamest, like...
I'm serious.
Oh,
it's just so bad, dude. Like, I keep scratching it.
Nobody cares.
Have a little bit of empathy.
Listen, we're trying to entertain people here, believe it or not. And an itchy finger doesn't get the job done. Not at all.
Wow.
So,
wow.
I just,
Dogs,
I think
dogs
we
and
need to,
coffee. I never noticed that it says dogs
and coffee.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's a nice mug.
I like it.
I like it too. I don't know if we want to give these guys a plug or not, but it's an awesome organization.
Yeah?
Yeah, Grounds and Hounds.
That doesn't spill?
I don't know. Let me hold it. I'll hold it over the mixer and find out what happens. But it's a guy who started roasting his own coffee, and he wanted to do something special with it. Proceeds go to shelter animals.
Oh.
And I have a subscription, and every time it shows up at the house, there's a card in there that spells out exactly like how much money they've given to shelters, how many dogs.
So it's nonprofit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a nonprofit, but I know they donate a ton of money. The numbers are high. So they're doing great work too, as well. And it's good coffee.
It's good coffee.
I enjoy it.
That's the one you gave me
I did
recently, right?
Yeah,
I didn't open it yet. So
yeah, I gave you the Alpha Blend.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Alpha Blend.
Yeah, I think we are plugging these guys. I'm gonna have to reach out, or we're gonna have to stop recording. But no, I mean, free publicity. Not that they need it from us, but yeah, Grounds and Hounds. They got good stuff, and they got good merchandise too. That whoever's running that show over there.
Look at that.
Cool.
Instead of itchy finger, we're talking about coffee
yes, and I think that the first 2
that
minutes
was entertaining,
of this,
huh?
it's more entertaining than an itchy finger. Absolutely. I'm doodling over here. That's how entertaining your itchy finger is I'm drawing little pictures. So,
all right, what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about Tarik and development.
Development.
Yeah, the Tarikoplata developed from the Gigolo-plata.
If you didn't listen, you need to. This is ridiculous. But it was a good conversation. First of all, very pleasantly surprised, how smart this guy is.
Well, so I think sometimes you and I do research differently.
Yeah.
I like to get a vibe on their personality a little bit. So I'll watch videos and I'll listen to previous podcasts rather than check out their achievements necessarily.
Yeah.
So I knew going in, kind of what his personality was like a little bit, and how well spoken he was. And obviously smart. I mean, when you're developing your own techniques, when you're a blue belt that travel the world, like it's a legit thing. At least when it comes to jiu-jitsu, you're smart. That's for sure. And, he told a quick little story that somebody was at a 10th planet. I don't even remember what country it was. Thailand. Yes. And they were filming they had one of those technique maps or brain maps on the wall. And there was the Tarikoplata. And he was like, oh my God, it's in a 10th planet in Thailand. And I think at that point he was still, he was maybe still a blue belt or maybe only a purple belt. He wasn't a black belt yet. And that's some amazing stuff.
So how do you take development like this in your own world, right? So you've been on the mat for a while. How long has it been now?
I don't like to say.
Okay, few years. How do you approach a development like this, right? So it doesn't have to be, you're developing a new technique, but you're studying a system, you're studying a subset of.
Right. So how did he developed it? If we didn't talk about the actual development of it, but I believe he was having some struggles finding himself in certain positions and trying to get Kimuras, and he couldn't get it. People were defending it.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't strong enough, blah, all those things. So he started exploring, what can I do to make this work for me? And it developed into this amazing, shoulder lock. And, for me, obviously it's at a much lesser degree. But I look at things like, okay, this isn't working. Why? How do I figure it out? How do I make it work? And rather than take it to the level he did, where he worked on this thing for years, it's like, okay, what adjustments do I need to make? Or, what am I doing wrong? So that I can correct these. We talked a lot about bad habits. Mm-hmm. So why isn't it working? Is it because of me? What am I doing wrong? Or is it a physical thing, being older and things like that? And then you start dissecting all those things and then you move forward, figure it out and move forward with it.
Yeah, he mentioned something very interesting about this development, which I wrote down. So there's like few components that have a lot to do with what we do and how we learn and how we study. And he says physical component, obviously our body types, to the technique itself, the mechanics. 3 is a partner, and 4 was preference. So we gravitate towards some things, we get pushed away from other things, and so on, right? And a combination of those 4, it will really create a decision, create a scenario in which we make a decision whether this technique is quote unquote working for us. So at which point do you, I don't want to use the word give up, but at which point do you table things away and say, I've done enough development on this and I want to move on to something else?
I don't know. I think it's different for everybody. I think he talked a lot about.
What about you? What about you?
Okay, for me personally,
yeah.
It's more. I think it's that preference thing, really. My goals are different than other people's goals. Some people want to compete. Some people want to, do this or that. And so, what's my goal is, I just want to be better than I was, and this isn't helping me get there. But this other thing is, so that's my preference, and I'm gonna work on that. One of the things he talked about though was like, I'm gonna put it when it starts interfering, or I have other things that I need to achieve at the moment, you put it aside, and once you get through that, you bring it back out. And I think that too many people, we want that instant gratification. We don't give time. We don't give things time to develop. This isn't working. It's not for me. I'm done with it, whether we're talking about jiu-jitsu or not. And I think that you really have to kind of settle yourself and say, okay, this is going to be a process. And, I don't know if you can put an end date on things. You just keep going until it's a feeling. You kind of know,
But how do you measure that?
I don't think.
How do you see
it's
what I'm
intuitive
saying? Because for some people, it will be like, whatever. This is not working after day 1. And other people will spend 3 years on it, and they will say, it's still not working. And, but there's a difference between, 1 day and, 700 days.
Right. So be honest with yourself. Did you really put in the work? And if you did, then you can just say, hey, you know what? I have really been working on this, and it just isn't for me. I'm done. Or I've really been working on this and I'm satisfied with the results. I'm having success with it more often than not. So maybe I'm done. Or I was having success with it, and now not so much. So let's go back to the drawing board, right? Or people figured it out. I'm done with it, right? I guess those are your options. And I think it's very up to the individual, really.
It certainly is.
You know? I mean, on all aspects of it, whether you give it 5 minutes or you give it 5 years, it's really up to the individual.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And there was a lot of gray area and little steps in between, and that's distraction points and complexities, and
this whole art is like that. It's all. I mean, it's probably one of the most individual things you can do, even more so than other individual sports, because it's. He talked about running at one point. And the races are always the same. I was thinking about it while he was talking about it. You start in the same spot. You finish in the same spot. It's only you in that lane, right? And so it's the exact same. There's minor things that can happen, right? There's little things that can happen, or major things like an injury. But I think jiu-jitsu, it's so much more dependent on that other person, what they're doing. You go in with a plan, but they have a plan of their own, and I'm sure it's not letting you execute yours, right? So he talked about, this grip is out of reach, or he's not letting me put my foot there, right? So now I gotta improvise, I gotta develop, I gotta change things, and I think that's what's one of the most unique things about jiu-jitsu, which in turn makes it never ending, right? We've talked about that too. It's not something where I learned a kata and I can throw this kick X amount of times. It's, it'd be like if you're throwing that kick X amount of times into a bag, but now that bag has a mind of its own and it's moving, and now you can't throw that kick, it's probably not a very good analogy, but because jiu-jitsu is constantly developing, it's never ending. There's a counter to everything, and then there's a counter to that, and it just keeps growing. It's like, they say the universe is ever expanding. There's no end. I think it's kind of like that. It's just going to keep changing.
Continuous adaptation.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. So how do he talked about bad habits too. And, well, no, hold on. Right. But I think it's important point of the conversation when we talk about development, because we all make mistakes.
Sure.
It doesn't matter how long you've been on the mat. It's been, 6 months or, 16 years. It doesn't matter. We all make mistakes. We drive for the perfection. We'll drive for smooth. We drive for making logic out of all of this, but it's hard, right? So how do you give us a perspective in your mind as in the last few years that you've been doing this? How do you identify a bad habit? How do you deal with a bad habit? Is there even a way to avoid a bad habit?
I think once you have to recognize it. We talked a little bit about it in the episode with Tarik, but we also talked about, I remember Kenny Florian talking about it, where you got to have a bird's eye view of what you're doing. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, this, I have this habit of doing this. Why am I always doing that? And then figure out maybe the correct way to do it, and then go in with that, a plan of, I'm not going to do that today. This is, my plan today isn't to submit so-and-so. My plan today is not to do.
But that's so hard.
It's really hard. It's very hard, especially, we talked about new people, where if they're going with other new people and they're developing a bad habit that seems like a good thing because nobody knows how to defend it, so they're doing this odd thing that as soon as they go against somebody who's got some time on the mat is really going to be a detriment. But they're developing it and they think it's working and they think it's good. So at some point you have this realization of, oh, this isn't going to get me any further. It's really hard to break Bad habits are hard to break on the mat or off the mat, right? They're hard to break. You have to be disciplined about it, you know? And without that discipline, then you're probably just going to keep relying on it, especially if it's something that did work, right? So if you have a bad habit that every time you do it, you know,
and somehow it gets you to success.
Yeah, so you have a bad habit, and every time you do it, you get submitted or you get your back taken. It's easier probably to be like, okay, you recognize it, and then you put a stop to it. Mm-hmm. Where if it's something that for the first year you're doing this, it's working for you. Well, why isn't it working anymore? I got to try harder. I got to do this. I got to be more aggressive with it or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And you just keep making it worse. It's harder to, I think, recognize that.
It's like those jiu-jitsu epiphanies that we have years in, you know, like we've been doing something for a very, very long time. And so it happened. Nobody pointed out that this is not the smartest thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then you learn the hard way when you get demolished by, you know, by making that action, taking that action. And it's like, why nobody told me this a year ago? Mm-hmm. You know, I wish somebody did. We would avoid a lot of these embarrassments.
Or here I am again. You know?
But speaking of hard things, last night we had some visitors here at the academy. And you know, through the conversations, you know, Casey, shout out to Casey, one of the guys who has begun his journey here at the academy, said, I asked him, you know, why he was here, what brings him here, you know, and he says he wants to learn new things and he wants to do hard things, and that really stuck with me because I don't recall anybody ever having that desire. And instantly, our conversation from a week ago, 2 weeks ago came up when you were sharing some experiences with your daughter. You know, you can do hard things, and it's okay to do hard things. It's okay to do these things, you know, and it really connected those two separate events. So I just want to, you know, give shout out to Casey. Good for you, Casey. You know, I think is a jiu-jitsu is definitely, you know.
Yeah,
there's hard things in there.
Yeah, and I don't remember that you can do hard things. I got from the podcast from a guest, and it was Kenny Florian.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. He's coming up a lot today.
Yeah. Shout out to Kenny.
Yes, and so I started with my kids. You can do hard things, and I've turned it, and now I do it with the kids in the academy. Mm-hmm. Is when you can see when they're disappointed in themselves or they're frustrated, and you tell them, man, you can do these things. It's going to take time. Yeah. But you can do the hard stuff. Yeah. And then when they do it, I think the look on their face.
The satisfaction is magnified.
Yeah. They're so happy. They're so excited. The sense of satisfaction and achievement is tenfold. So,
yeah.
And it goes for adults too. You can do the hard things.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for making an impact on everybody, including me. No, listen, don't be modest. I mean, it is what it is. It's part of the conversation, and I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. I'd hate when the attention's turned on me unless I'm asking for it. And being silly. So,
all right. So before we wrap this up, everyone send a message to Gary on Instagram, thanking him for how amazing he is.
If one of you do it, I don't know what. I don't know what'll happen. I'll be grateful.
There you go. Spread the word.
All right. Are we done?
Well, let's better wrap this up.
All right. Peace.
Later.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.